Welcome everybody to another Rainmaker podcast. And today I got a special guest for you, Mr. Edward Pritchett, and he's going to be talking to you agents how you can scale your agency to a big business. Right now, he has over 760 active monthly agents. And so stick around for this video. He's going to drop some knowledge for you. Can't wait. Edward, my man, thank you so much for hopping on and taking the time to speak with us today. Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Hey, happy to be here, man. Excited to share with you, with your audience. But honestly, as we were talking at a recent conference, it's more just I enjoy collaborating with someone who's going places that I'm trying to go to, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure. Yeah,
that's fun.
100%. It's always good to connect. And like I was telling you before we started this show, this is definitely checking off one of the boxes that I wanted to do in 2023 was to come to 8%. I've been wanting to speak at 8%, but more importantly, I wanted to connect with some of the people there and watching some of the speakers and the content. I was really drawn to you for multiple reasons. Obviously, one of them was that you look like me, but also it was that the way that you were able to communicate effectively in a room with people. And then more importantly, the leadership that I could sense just from watching things and just from the leadership that you gave me, it allowed me to have a pretty good speech at 8%. So definitely grateful for having you on. Well, for most people or some people who probably don't know who Edward Pritchett is, let's kind of go back to the beginning. Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur or to start in life insurance? You know, how did you even get into this whole life insurance game in the first place?
Well, I think like many people who are in life insurance sales or in sales in general, I think if you talk to any salesperson, they kind of stumbled into the sales career that they are in. Most of us didn't go to college thinking that we were going to be, I didn't go to get a 4 year degree to be in sales, right? Like that. I think that's kind of the wiring that we're all taught. When at the end of the day, I mean, every position that you're in, every job that you have, you're selling somebody, right? You may not be
Right.
doing that transaction of exchanging a product for dollars and cents, but you're selling your creativity, you're selling your ability to complete projects, whatever it is that you do, especially in the W-2 world. So for me, my dad was an entrepreneur. He started off as an engineer, a chemical engineer, which is why I went to school to get my degree in chemical engineering. But only used my degree for just a handful of years after I graduated from Yale University in 2005. Uh, Partly because in 2007, 2008, that was the start of the Great Recession. And the engineering company that I was working for, which was controlled by my father, was just it they had to downsize. Like the work wasn't there, and it was like either I can move very far away from where I had established myself and take a pay cut if I wanted to continue in the engineering world, or go find something else to do. And
Yeah.
that's what led me into insurance. Someone said, "Hey, you have some good business skills. You seem like you're a people person. I think you do well selling life insurance." I was like, I'll try it until I can find that next engineering job."
Yeah, for sure. Man, that's so interesting. So one is like hearing Yale is like, oh man, this guy is a brainiac. And then engineering is like, oh yeah, the details. How does that translate from having a Yale education and an engineering background? How does that translate to help you in the insurance business?
Well, I think the biggest part is the process. Um, if you're going to start any kind of business, any kind of enterprise, the better your processes are, the better your business can flow, the better you can figure out when you have something going wrong and how you can fix it when you know what got us to this point. I think a lot of people start with that entrepreneurial mindset, and they just kind of develop it as they go. But I've always been someone who, like, I wanted to know what the process was. It's why I decided to go independent. I started off in the captive world, but I wanted to go in the independent side because in the captive world, I had to follow their process, and if I didn't follow their process, I was, not reprimanded, but, I had a unit manager or a regional manager saying, "Hey, that's not how we do it." I'm like, well, how we do it sucks. We need to do it a different way. Um, so being on the independent side has allowed me to develop a lot of processes for myself to test those things out, and to work through what's the best flow, right, for making this happen. And that's the thing that I think, where I can say I still do use my college degree to a certain degree, uh, in that I really am very process oriented when it comes to how I run any of my businesses, whether it's, from my insurance practice to real estate to financial services and the investment arm. Like, I want to make sure that we can point to a process. So when things break down, because that's the thing, it's not an if, things are going to break down, right? So life is going to happen, Murphy's law.
Yes.
Right? But
Murphy's
when they
Law is gonna Murphy's Law for
It's
sure.
going to Murphy's law. And when they break down, I want to be able to go and pinpoint, okay, here's where we need to work on getting this corrected, right?
Yeah.
And the better I can get at that, the better my business becomes.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back, but like the nerd side of my brain is interested in the engineering part, which is how as an engineering person where you want to know how everything works and probably as a kid taking things apart just to understand how it works to put it back together. How do you effectively lead people who think that way as a new agent to get them to take action, whether as opposed to them thinking that they need to know everything about insurance in the first week to get them to just start to get their feet wet by either getting on the phone or running some appointments?
Yeah, I think this is where partnering with a group or organization that does have a process, right? Um, when I worked with the captive agency, they had a process. There were things that I felt like I could better in that process, but I had to learn that process before I could even pinpoint what was working and what wasn't. So whenever you're first getting started, like those people who like, I have to know and understand and learn every little thing. The great thing about a strong process where it's like, okay, number one, get a resource, a lead, a warm market list, whatever that resource is for someone who's potentially wanting to buy life insurance. Number two, contact those people, whether that's phone calls, door knocking, you run into them at a barbecue, but I'm having contacts with people about what I can help them out with. Number three, sit on appointments. On the appointments in the beginning, it's, products one, two, or three that I start off with to see, can I help them? Number four, I'm going to write an application. Number five, wash, rinse, and repeat, you know? And so like that's from the simplest standpoint, like that's a process that I talk about with my agents all the time when you're first getting started. It's just start there. And then you're going to find where in that process you need some additional help. Maybe you
Mm.
get to the appointment part of the process, like, oh man, Arturo, I don't know anything to write. Like, should I do term or whole life or IULs? Okay, now you can pause before that appointment, sit down with a mentor and say, okay, tell me a little bit about these clients that you're getting ready to go see with, right? Like those are the agents that I'm going to have interactions with because they've done the activity that only they can do. And that's setting the appointment in the first place. Coming across to a potential client with that, this is someone who's here for me and wants to help me out. And I'm interested in having a conversation with them. I've given them a little bit of information. They're going to come back to me and see what they can do to help me out. Right. And so if as long as a new agent has a basic process that they can just start, you're going to grow if you continue to track your process,
Mm.
track that you're doing along that process and find those pain points, right? Where are those points where you're slipping, where you're saying, okay, I had a whole bunch of appointments, but I didn't make any sales. Well, we can pinpoint that pretty quickly. It was like, okay, what are you saying during your appointments? And we go through, we, run a little bit of a biopsy. Hopefully we can do it before that. Like I'd rather, instead of a autopsy, that's after the fact. It's already, can't do nothing. I can do a biopsy because my team knows, okay, if I'm in an appointment or, we have something where we run a virtual office
Mm-hmm.
where even what like while you're running appointments, because we do most of our stuff via telephone and Zoom,
Right.
while you're running your appointments, you're in the virtual office. At the same time that you're running your appointments, you're not sharing your screen or anything. But if you run into something, you're like, you know what? And let's pretend you were one of my clients, Arturo. And I'm sitting down with him like, Arturo, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer, but I know who does. Give
Mm.
me 1 second to call my regional manager or send him a quick message, and I'll get the answer to that, and we can continue on with another part of this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, boom, I'm in the virtual office. I ask a question, and I come back to the client and talk about what I do know about, because there's a lot. Like, you got an insurance license, you know a lot about insurance. And you know more than that client does for sure. So it's being able to have that opportunity to go through a process, have those points in that process where okay, here's where I can go get some feedback. Here's where I can get a check in or a check up to
Mm-hmm.
make improving this process every single day, every single week as I'm iterating it. And that's how people get better in this business.
Yeah.
It's at bats,
Yeah.
it's getting out there and getting activity done more.
For sure. And I'm glad that you brought that up because that just made me think about one thing as like, somebody that is coming in as being afraid to make mistakes, right? Thinking that you need to know everything and have every single answer. And being afraid to say, you know what, I don't really know the answer to that, but I do know someone that is, and then leaning on your resources, right? And so coming in and not being afraid to make a mistake, because that's actually how you learn is you implement, right? You get feedback and then you reiterate that, right? And you try not to make the same mistake again. But so take me back though, because we're going to talk about how you've been able to become an extraordinary leader and lead an organization to over 700 and something agents actively writing every single month. But take me back to Edward Pritchard. However long you've been in the business when you first got started. That first 6 months, what was that like for you? He laughing.
Oh man, first 6 months. So got started in the business in the fall of 2008. And the first 6 months, like I said, I hadn't been in what I thought was sales before. Um, the captive organization that I work with, their process was make a list of your warm market and tell them all that you're selling life insurance, right? And I believe here's the thing, like that works. It works, right? Most people aren't willing to do that, but it gets you in front of people, and there's some of those people, your family and friends, who they need some of the products that you have. And so I was able to get started by helping people that I knew out with it. I didn't realize that my unit manager, who was like watching over me, was taking a good cut of that. Like that's part of how that process works too.
So you were getting a haircut.
I was getting a haircut for sure because he was helping me, right? He
Hmm.
was mentoring me to sell my family and friends, right?
The old
So
Power 200, get them
exactly,
to book
yeah.
appointments and come up. Okay. Yeah, I remember that because that's how I got started with Northwestern Mutual. And I can remember finally getting licensed. And then I had my first sales school and they gave me some homework, right? And they said, hey, you need to come to this meeting and here's this list and you need to write down 200 people. And I'm like, 200 people? I thought that was crazy. And now looking back at that, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand what was happening. And then I did have to, we called it joint work. And so I had to bring somebody in that had already done it for a little bit. And then obviously we split the commissions on that. So the first 6 months was a learning experience for you, welcoming you into the world of business as well as the real world of sales if you're selling insurance, right? So when did it actually click for you? When did you start to get your legs under you where you figured like, okay, if I can continue to do this or get better, like at what point were you like, all right, I can build something big and have some success in this business?
Yeah, for me, I wish I could say it was when I was with the captive agency. I think there it was just survival mode. I didn't have, I had been used to making $95,000 a year as an engineer, and now I'm, struggling to put together $30,000 a year as an insurance agent. And I still had $90,000 bills. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Like I had acquired some things over the years.
yes, the
That had to
lifestyle, the
be paid.
lifestyle creep.
Exactly. So there was that just kind of kept me in that place, and so I didn't really see my client as someone that I was trying to help. It was someone that I was trying to use to make money, right? Like I had to sell them in order to make money. And with it being a captive organization, if I couldn't sell them one of our products, there was nothing else I could do. So I had to make sure our products fit one way or another. Somehow they had to take one of our products.
Mm-hmm.
So that left me with it was a weird taste in my mouth. I didn't like that. I didn't know that. I knew for some of my clients I was helping them out because they were getting insurance and getting coverage that they did need. But with some, it was just like, I know there's better stuff out here than this. And that's when I started looking around. I found a independent marketing organization that represented, a plethora of the top carriers. Carriers like Mutual of Omaha, Transamerica, Foresters, American Amicable, America. Like the list goes on and on. Like they had all the carriers, and I was like, okay, here I can actually work for my client. Here I
Mm.
can actually work for my client. I can figure out what the client needs and find a carrier that has exactly what will solve their problem, solve their issue. Shop for price whenever I need to do that. Like it gave me some options when it came to that side. And it wasn't until one of my mentors talked with me about um, my background that a moment clicked for me where I realized how valuable life insurance was.
Mm.
And he helped me realize the time, like right after I graduated from college, that summer my mother passed away, and I have four younger siblings, and it was a dual income household. This was 2005, so everybody had you know multiple mortgages on their house. Like I can't believe that they allowed that to happen back then, but they did, which of course we know what that led to. And he kind of talked me through that process, and he helped me to remember, man, what a benefit it was when my mom's two life insurance policies paid out, and how it allowed our family to stay in our home, not have to move out immediately. My siblings who were in high school got to kind of go through that process, and stay in a place where they understood what was going on and could kind of grieve over time. My siblings who were still in college, they got to stay in college, right? Like they didn't have to drop out and come try to help support the family or anything like that. And it just made me realize how important the product that we have really is. Because had it
Yeah.
not been for those two policies, one was a mortgage protection policy, the other was just a general term policy. Had it not been for those two policies, it would have been even rougher. Like it was still rough, but it would have been a detrimental moment in our family's history.
Yeah.
And because an insurance agent decided to have the conversation with my mother and say, hey, here's how we can help you, Edith, um, our family was able to say, yeah, we got hit hard. We're dealing with an emotional loss, but mom took care of us financially.
Yeah.
She made sure that the mortgage payments were going to be made, that the bills could still be paid, and that we had the kind of future that she was hoping that we would have, not one that was shattered by grief and financial despair.
Yeah.
And that's what,
Yeah, man, I understand it because when my grandmother passed too, that kind of hit home to me that, I had never seen. I was a young kid trying to understand things, and I just couldn't understand why, people who were brothers and sisters and people who I looked up to, though my aunts and uncles, were just like upset with each other and fighting over things where, they didn't talk for a long time, and it wasn't until I got older that, it wasn't just two deaths. There was the literal death of my grandmother passing, but then there was also the financial death where people were trying to, to come up with money at that time. So I can see how that could impact you to shift your mindset. But I can also think about that agent that is just, kind of struggling, they haven't figured it out. And they haven't made that shift from this is somebody that I need to make money off of till this is somebody that I'm trying to help. And what sometimes people don't realize is that influences why you may be getting, I need to think about it, or I need to speak to my partner, or some kind of objection at the end that isn't a financial one, is because they can kind of sense that, right? And so, what shift or what type of mindset shift did you have to actually make? Because it's easy to say, I stopped looking at them like that, but like, how did you actually make that shift, and then how did it affect your business once you were able to make that shift?
I mean, for me, whenever I realized that, um, I started looking at each lead not as just like name and word on that lead, but it was a little trick. Another friend of mine in the industry taught me is just like draw a little picture of a house on that lead. Like think of it as that household, that family. Try to connect it to the people in your life. And so it made me start personalizing them and getting to that place where whenever and this is back then it was all door to door, kneecap to kneecap, right? So like whenever I go up to the door for that appointment, I knocked on the door. When I wiped my feet on the mat to step into their house, I left Edward outside, and then when I'm inside, it's all about them. And I try
Wow.
to do the same thing when it comes to even on my virtual appointments these days. It's like how can I pause Edward for a minute, right, whenever we start this appointment, and make it all about like what is their need, what are their desires, what are their dreams and hopes, and how can we provide a solution for them so that we can protect that.
Yeah,
And
man.
that was the shift. Like whenever I was able to start doing that on a regular basis, the more I did it, the better I got at it. And my sales, for some reason, Arturo, everybody's just, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I appreciate you coming over. Like let's do this, versus what you were saying earlier. Well, let me think about it. I don't know that I totally trust what
Yeah,
why
for
you're
sure.
here or what your motivation is. But when they started feeling that I was there for them, and I left Edward outside, and I was all there for John Q. Client. Next thing you know, they were just there. I gave them the reason to say yes.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. And it's funny because Jim Rohn says the things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. And a lot of times, like our needs, we put them before the prospect that we want to become a client, which is all about us, right? And when you leave Edward at the door, when you step into their home, you make it all about them. What are the things that they're concerned about? What are the things that are important to them? What are the things that the legacy that they want to leave behind? Why do they fill out this form? When you start asking them those questions, it's very interesting that when you ask questions, people come to the realization themselves, and you don't really need to convince anybody. But when you're selling for you, you need this. Here's why you need this, right? And you're kind of pushing that agenda. And it's just one of those things as a human being, we're able to pick up on people's motives, right? It's just like this intuition that we have. And sometimes people can tell when you have commission breath, or, you're just there at the next number. So I'm curious to know when did you start building in the business? Like, when did that happen?
So I started with the current IMO that I'm with right now. So I've been with them for almost 13 years now. Um, And at first, it was I needed to make some income. So I got out there, I took the leads, I followed the process. And then as I started to get results, one of my mentors was like, you could really help train other people to do what you're doing. So this was a little over 2 years in the industry. But within 4 months of being with my current marketing organization, that's when I started to reach out. And I initially, it's kind of one of those like I needed to go back to Egypt to bring people to the promised land. So
Yeah.
I went back to a lot of my friends and buddies at the captive organization. Said, "Hey guys, like they actually have leads, leads over here. Like you got to come take a look at this." So initially, that's where I started. Was just with friends in the industry saying, this is something different. You got to check this out. And that's how I started building my organization. And then, we started to recruit, whether it was warm market, cold market, and started to build the organization, from that point back in 2011.
Yeah. And so, how many active agents do you have right now?
Just over 760 active agents sold on any given month.
Okay. So let's talk to the agents that's probably, what you said, about 4 months in, and they probably did what you did, and they got about, a handful. They got maybe 10 people they recruited, and 5 people showing up to the Zoom, and maybe like one or two actually taking some action. And they're like, okay, 760 seems like a lot. I'm just trying to get to 100. How are you able to attract people? What's your philosophy on recruiting? And what are some best practices to be able to make sure that you are getting people that you don't have to babysit?
Well, first and foremost, you want to hire people that you don't have to babysit. Like whenever I'm going through that process, this is not just the, throw some spaghetti up against the wall and see which pieces stick. I need to start having conversations with people about, what's their motivation, what are they looking for, what are they wanting to do, right? Like their why, their purpose is what ultimately is going to drive them, and if they don't have that, I'm not the person who's going to be able to just give that to them. So
Mm,
having conversations on the front end, really digging into, you know, this is like any other sales job where it's going to have its moments of hardness. And what's that driving motivation that is going to have you push through that hardness when those times come?
mm.
So just as transparent as I can, setting the expectations early about what this is and what it isn't. Like this isn't just like, get rich quick type situation here. And then it's when you find those people who kind of have that same mindset that you have, who have the same culture and the same beliefs that you have for your business, whether that's from maybe your IMO has kind of this a set of cultural standards and best practices that they do, or you have to set that for yourself. One of the ones that I share with my IMO is we do the right thing even when no one's looking, right? Because in our business, there's a lot of times that nobody's looking, and there's a lot of things that you can do that you can get away with it and it's kind of okay, but is it in their the best interest? Is it the right thing at the right time?
Mm,
So being able to find people um, that resonate with that,
mm,
that share that same core belief. So it's those kind of things where if the more you exemplify it, I think top producers are always intriguing. People want to get around them like, oh, if I can get around them, they'll share their silver bullet tips with me. There's no silver bullet tips. What you're going to see is that it's they put in the work, they put in the activity, and they're consistent with it. Right? They're students of the business all of the time, and the more you are that person, the more people you will attract to you for that. And when you hold those high standards, people will always want to be a part of your organization and want to stay connected to you. And that's how you start to build loyalty that lasts. I mean, I've had some agents who have been with me now for going on 12 years.
mm. Yeah, that's amazing, man. So, I took some notes on that one. Something was like, grab your phone and take some notes. And so, a couple of things that stood out to me was one, you said, first of all, um, hire people that have some of these characteristics: driven, you want to set the right expectations, right? People who are believers, and then also folks that have some integrity. And like the first one is like make sure these people are already driven, right? Because like motivation and drive are two different things, right? Motivation is something that gets you fired up in the moment, which soon will pass, or it'll fade over time once you are met with some type of adversity, right? But like driven people, have discipline where they continue to get up and fight every single day, or they try to put in the work despite the outcome not being what it is. Because over time, if they continue to chop at the tree, right, eventually it's going to fall. So finding some people that you don't have to babysit and motivate every single day. So if they aren't driven, right, and they aren't already motivated, then they're probably not going to be a fit for the life insurance business, right?
Or any business. I mean,
Mm,
like I don't know of anybody who has been able to take someone who's not driven or motivated and make them motivated, make them driven, right? Like that's that internal thing that comes from inside a person, and it's kind of, and this is to get a little geeky, but like your level of drive is a derivative of your why.
mm,
Your level of drive is a derivative of your why. The bigger your why is, the higher that level of drive is going to be. So I'm looking for people who have a why that is just, I want it to be out there, but like so real to them, right?
yeah.
And that's why we talk about the different books that we encourage people to read, the self and personal development, because the more you develop yourself, the bigger you can make the why, the bigger you can grow your drivenness, so that you can do the things that are challenging. There's a lot of things in this business or any business that are
Mm,
challenging. There's going to
yeah.
be challenging days. There's going to be easy days. But if you can't get through the challenging days with the same attitude and the same ease of nature and the peace that you get through the easy days, then eventually one of those challenging days is going to take you out of the business,
Yeah,
whatever
for sure.
whatever business that might be. You know.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the last things you said I thought was interesting too is you need to become the person that people want to follow. So if you're looking to attract top producers, high level entrepreneurs, right? You need to become one of those, and then people will start to gravitate towards you because they either want to learn from you or they want to come and work alongside you to help you build something great. So I think that that's one of the things that we don't talk about enough is you know it's not just recruiting the best people. A players know what another A player looks like, right?
Mhm.
And so when it comes down to that, you want to become that person that people want to follow. How are you able to become the person that 760, maybe even more than that, but we just talk about the active people that are doing something. How are you able to become the person that people wanted to get connected to and follow?
I, it's a good question. I mean, I think there's no singular answer to that. Um, it starts though with being as best of a version of yourself as you possibly can be, right? Like people like authentic people. People like people who are have similarities in common with them. You know, driven people want to be around other driven people, right? You said it earlier. It's that ideal of you have to become what you want to attract, and I don't think it's just you have to become, but you have to be,
Mm,
right? Some people try to put on, a little, a nice dress and like, or a good suit, and they think that okay, this is me becoming. But like, it doesn't matter what you wear, it doesn't matter how you look. Like the people who are, they just are. Like every action that they do, the decisions that they make show them to be true to who they are. So, like, if you're wanting to be a high level producer and you have trouble picking up the phone and making dials 3, 4, 5 days a week, if that's what it takes, are you a high level producer?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, if you're willing to do whatever it takes, right? If you're willing to do the work when you don't want to do the work, when you do want to do the work, whether it's rainy or sunny, then you're going to attract people who are like that. If you're someone who finds excuses for why you didn't do everything you were supposed to do, then guess what your people are going to find? A whole bunch of excuses for why they can't do all the things that you're asking them to do. Right? Like
Yeah.
you get where you are, even if you think you're hiding it. Right? Like I see a lot of people they think, oh, that nobody can tell. Just like our clients can tell in the home if we're there for them or for ourselves. An agent who you're working with can tell, are you for me or are you for yourself?
Mm. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that leads right into why I asked you that question of how people want to be followed. Because I know I talk to a lot of agents that sometimes they're in their organization, but there's just lack of leadership, right? And so that's what I wanted to kind of transition to is just like, people who do have an agency where they're trying to build, there's a responsibility that comes with that, right? Where you're um, trying to help somebody change their life and maybe taking them out of a situation to put them in a better one. So you have a moral obligation to give it all you have. And sometimes I feel like that part of the business left to be intended sometime because you're just hiring any and everybody. So what type of leadership does it take in order to build an agency to have 760 producers every month?
Well, the first thing is you got to take your ego and not just put it in your back pocket, but like set it down somewhere. just leave it alone. Right? Everybody wants to be their own boss. Everybody wants to be the one in charge to a certain degree, right? And if I tried to force my 1099 independent agents to do anything that they didn't want to do, they just wouldn't do it, right? Like I have some agents who are they love creating systems and websites, and they want to develop trainings, and I can say, no, you will not do that. And then what they're going to ultimately do is be like, well, let me go find somewhere else where I can do that. Right? Everybody wants to be able to express who they are. And I want to give everybody that understanding that you have the ability to do that. And here's what I need from you in order to really be able to like take off the reins and allow you to do whatever you need to do. And that is get results. Right? I'll get results myself. I don't need you to pay my family's bills. I'll go get results myself. You can copy what I'm doing and then go do whatever you need to do to let your heart sing, right? Like if that's developing the newest CRM for the life insurance agency, I've had multiple agents go down that path, and like they get started and they want to do that, or they want to develop a training side, or they want to write a book, or it's like that's fantastic. You know, you're free to do these things. The one thing that I ask is that you make sure that you and your family are taken care of, because you're getting results while you're doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you allow people, like when people know that um, that you're putting your trust in them to solve their own problems, you're not trying to baby them, you're not checking up on them all the time, the better they typically do when it comes to this business.
Mm.
Like if they're working under in that type of environment, and it's the ones where, and I see this, from a call center standpoint, because I operate one of those where if you're micromanaging people, like you're gonna get people that either just gonna not be working, and ultimately you're gonna have to fire them, or it's people who like it just they kind of crack under that pressure, and then don't end up being producers anyway, or leave and quit because they're not trying to be under somebody's thumb. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of keeping those things in mind, not feeling like you're the boss of you, but you're not the boss of everybody else. Especially if you're running an independent agency, and you have a whole bunch of 1099 employees. Even if you have staff, like you still have to and should give people autonomy to be able to help you, like partner with you to build your business, to build your enterprise, right? Because they need to get something out of it too. And it's not just the financial compensation, but it's the thing that that purposeful thing that lights them up, that makes them feel like this is what I was called here to be able to do.
Yeah. Well, Edward, you have dropped so many gems on this show today. I definitely have my notes here. And if there's probably 140,000 agents that'll get to see this, that are either on my YouTube channel, Instagram, or on my email list, that this will definitely be going out to. So if people are watching this and they love your story and they're interested just to get closer to you, to get connected, or just to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing over there with the Pritchett Agency, with what you're building, what's the easiest way for people to get in contact with you?
Easiest way to get in contact would be through Instagram, just the Edward Pritchett. So Edward Pritchett, or at, I guess, in front of that. Shoot me a DM. Happy to chat. I love being able to, and where we met at 8% conference, being a part of industry wide events. The reason I partnered with Cody on that is because I really want to see us raise the levels in this industry. I think that the training that we have out there, the information that's out there, there's so much of it, and more people need to have full access to it. So
Yeah,
that's
100%.
one spot, at the Edward Pritchett on Instagram. Of course, that links to all the Facebook stuff, and um, you know that's going to be the simplest way to get in touch with me.
Yeah, for sure. And again, thanks so much, because I like what you just said. As an industry, right, we could definitely use and really need a little bit more collaboration, because we're all fighting the same fight. So, we're better together anyway. To say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then we need to go together.
Hmm.
And my saying for 2023 has been collaboration is the new currency. And that's what I've been working towards, which is why I was excited to get to 8%. I was excited to connect with you. I got to meet some amazing people like Mike Hall, Roy Snar, Nate Offord, like all of these people doing amazing things in this industry that were all like in this one place. I'm like, man, these are my people. So it was definitely exciting to get to meet with you. And again, thank you so much for hopping on and sharing all of those gems with us, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Again, if you love this podcast, go ahead and click the like button to subscribe to this YouTube channel, as well as if you loved Edward's story and would love to just reach out to him and connect with him, you can go to at the Edward Pritchett on Instagram. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the next podcast.